In April 2014, Stanford University adopted a new password policy that got a lot of attention in the IT security community. It is unique in the sense that it varies the password requirements based on the length of the password. Passwords that are shorter require more character types, while passwords that are longer require fewer character types, or perhaps even only one character type if it's 20 or more characters. This password policy has a couple of benefits. First, it encourages users to make better choices of using longer passwords in lieu of shorter ones. A side benefit of this policy is the effect on mobile users. They don't have to go to a special keyboard if they make the choice of using a longer password. So it's a great password policy to consider. In this example, I'm going to show you how to configure the nFront password filter product to use the Stanford policy, as well as also accommodate a couple of other requirements. So we're going to assume that you have to meet PCI compliance and enforce a number in every password, and that will override the Stanford policy in all cases. And we want to eliminate the trivial dictionary words that may be used within a password. So likely we would not have a dictionary of millions of words, but we would choose a much smaller one to eliminate the easy and trivial ones that may be chosen. So we're going to open up the group policy editor. We have a policy, a GPO object in place here from a prior video, and we have the template loaded for the multiple policy version of the product. So here we are at the multi-policy configuration settings, and we have an evaluation code for the registration and no other configuration has been done. So the next step I would do is to turn on debugging so that we can inspect the logs. And to accomplish the Stanford settings, we've built that into the compliance. So if you go to compliance settings, enable, and tell it to enforce the Stanford settings, then we will have that policy applied essentially as part of the default policy. So let me move this over. So choosing the Stanford compliance, even though it does not have the effect of modifying the graphical environment in the GPMC, it really is going to become a part of that default policy and take effect for anyone affected by the default policy. In the case of the nFront password filter software, the default policy applies to all users unless you make any exclusions. So you could exclude people based on groups or OU membership from the default policy, and they would be excluded from the Stanford policy. However, in our case, we're going to apply this to all users, and we're going to add some additional criteria. So in the default policy, we want to add a few additional criteria, which is to enforce one numeric character, which is near the top. And down towards the bottom, we also want to add the dictionary checking. So here is our check for dictionary words. And this will look for the dictionary word anywhere within the password, beginning, middle, or end, and in any case, upper, lower, or mixed. So if a password contains that dictionary word, it's going to be rejected. So we will say OK here. And now we have those settings in place. I'm going to minimize this, and we will run a gpupdate, and this will update the registry, and then we are ready to do some testing. So once the gpupdate completes, we'll make a test password change, just doing a command line reset. So I'll type net user, I'll pick out a username, we'll choose test200 as one of the users on the system, and I'm going to choose a password of green frog. So we have 9 characters here, and we do not have a numeric, we do not have a special, and with that Stanford policy, if we are between 8 and 11 characters, let's see if we can get both of these on the screen at once, so you can see those requirements. So for an 8 to 11 character password, we need to contain numeric and special in addition to upper and lower, so this should fail, and it does. And if we go out to our System32 log files, we will see in the log, after scrolling down a bit, that the Stanford policy is in place for all users. So that's our note that Stanford is in place. We also see we're checking for a minimum of 1 numeric character. And if I scroll to the bottom, I see the reasons for failure. In this case, we're failing because we're missing those 2 additional character types. If we go back to that command line, and we simply add in a 1 and an exclamation, we should get a success there with that 8 to 11 character password. If we go back and do some additional testing, we mentioned the idea of a dictionary. So we have a dictionary loaded here, and actually this looks like a larger dictionary file. No, I take that back. This is a smaller version of the dictionary that's in place. So we have the word password, the word summer, the year 2016. So we have a small dictionary file. And now let's take a short password that would most definitely meet Microsoft complexity. So password 1 exclamation, that would actually meet the traditional Stanford Password Policy as I've described it. And this will fail. So this will fail because of the inclusion of that dictionary word, not for the fact it did not meet Stanford. We see the dictionary check is queued, the dictionary word was found, and that's the reason for failure. So the Stanford policy requirements are met in that case. If we have users who are willing to type in a longer password, maybe they're going to type in green frogs are cool. So that gets us into the 16 to 19 character range where upper and lower case are allowed. So this is a password someone may type from a mobile device, for example, without going to a special keyboard. This looks like it fails, and normally it would pass because of the Stanford. However, we are forced to meet PCI compliance, so we need a number on the end. So if we simply add a number to the end, we're going to get a success. So this gives an example of implementing that Stanford policy for all of your users, also enabling the default and adding a few additional requirements like the requirement of a numeric and including a pretty simplistic dictionary to eliminate the use of the trivial words within those passwords. So this would be a great policy to consider, or a variation of it on your network.